Hello, Weil Alumni. I'm Courtney Marcus, co-managing partner of Weil's Dallas office, co-head of our U.S. banking finance practice, and a member of our firm's management committee. Today, I am thrilled to be hosting this edition of the Weil Alumni Interview Series with one of my friends and former colleagues, Mary Korby. And before I let her jump in, I want to say a few things about her. Mary is a beloved former corporate partner who was resident in the Dallas office for 2 decades before she retired from the partnership in 2012. Mary's practice focused on advising boards of directors and companies regarding securities, laws, compliance, corporate governance, as well as tender offers, joint ventures, and mergers and acquisitions. She was involved in complex cross-border public and private transactions in diverse industries such as chemicals, defense, recycling, green energy, aviation, and manufacturing. As many of us have, Mary is also advised in restructuring transactions. And some of the industry names you will certainly recognize who have been clients that Mary has had significant relationships with include American Airlines, including in connection with the TWA acquisition by American and American's restructuring, and also the Texas giant Enron, who she represented in connection with their bankruptcy filing and associated corporate work. Mary was also an internal leader at Weil. She was the founding member of what is now our Associates Committee, and she also served as the chair of our Professional Evaluation and Compensation Committee. Since retiring from Weil, Mary has been a member of the board of directors of Darling International, Inc., and I am honored to introduce you to Mary Korby. Welcome.
Oh, well, thank you, Courtney. That was lovely.
Well, I had to cut it short because I want to save lots of time for questions and people to get to know you here, but super impressive and really, really glad that you've taken the time with us today. So thank you so much.
Well, it's fun. So what can we talk about?
Sure. Well, so to start, you were involved in many landmark matters during your time at Weil, some of which I briefly mentioned in my introduction. Do you have any memories of triumphs or successes or challenges from your practicing days at Weil which stick with you the most?
Any number. I will say that one of the great joys of practicing at Weil was having the opportunity again and again to see the matter I was working on top of the fold in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, and certainly the local news. So it was a wonderful career in no small part with thanks to local leaders in the Dallas office and good friends of mine in the New York office. That gave me the opportunity to be involved in a lot of these matters. You mentioned TWA going in. In April of 2001, American purchased TWA out of bankruptcy. And of course, the process of purchasing it out of bankruptcy meant that we were doing an asset purchase, which is just bread and butter to all of our corporate colleagues. What made this challenging was that TWA had hundreds and hundreds of airplanes, and they had to be purchased individually. Of course, the law may have changed, I'm sure it has, over the last 20 years. But at that time, the way you purchased an airplane was to take the certificate of ownership out of the moral equivalent of the glove box in the airplane and take that out, replace it with the certificate of ownership of the new owner, which had been registered with the FAA. Fortunately, the FAA understood we had a real challenge trying to simultaneously record the transfer of hundreds of airplanes at once. And because of our lenders' sensitivity to having their liens in place, the FAA was not going to be able to take days and days to make all of these physical transfers and record them. So we worked out a method, even for planes that were in the air. The senior flight attendant was given the new ownership document, and at 11:01 on April 14th would reach into this particular compartment, take the old document out, put the new document in, close it. And that's the way that we transferred hundreds of airplanes at one time and in one day all over the world. And it was challenging. We worked very hard, by the way, including with the support of the American team internally, of their business folks and their legal folks, in order to have this all set up and to have it occur without a flaw. And it was certainly a time to open the bottle of champagne when it went off without a hitch. So that's memorable. And I guess, of course, Enron was memorable because it made law. Here's a great anecdote. So Tom Roberts, whom all the alumni remember, and I'm sure the younger group have at least heard of him. I was at a hockey game in October of 2001, so right after 9/11. And Tom called me and said, could you go with me to Houston on Saturday to meet with the legal folks at Enron? They have some things going on. They need our advice. We have a 10 o'clock meeting. We'll have a 12 o'clock flight coming back. You'll be home to have dinner with your husband. No problem. And of course, I said yes. And we went to Houston. I was still there 2 weeks later and did not make it home. Called a former partner, Melanie Gray, in the Houston office that afternoon and said, Melanie, you've got to take me to Target. I've got to have a toothbrush, toothpaste, clean underwear, and mascara, because I can, kind of wear the same clothes every day. But I have to brush my teeth and I have to have mascara. So literally, Melanie came to get me, took me to Target, actually took me to her house, raided her closet, and gave me a couple of things that I could wear until my husband could FedEx some clothes to me. And I rarely left Houston for probably, 5 or 6 months after that.
That's amazing. That's an amazing memory. My memory of Enron was the all call I think we got in Dallas. It said, if you're within 60 miles of the office, we need you back immediately. And please let us know if you have availability.
And I didn't know about that. I do remember that the next day people started coming in waves. Glenn West arrived early. He must have been on the very first plane on Sunday morning. And by that time, we had reached out to Martin Bienenstock, who was co-chair of the restructuring group and was resident in New York, and asked him to come down and send some people. Gary Holzer came very quickly, and a team sort of coalesced. And I still look back at the next couple of months. We actually filed Enron for bankruptcy on December 2nd. So 2 months later. And to prepare, 3,000 entities for filing or the equivalent in the various jurisdictions that Enron had business in, I still look back and wonder how in the world we did it. It was an all hands on deck slog, but it was a wonderful feeling to be involved in it, to just have such a terrific team that consistently hit the mark for 2 years.
That's awesome. Well, it is. It's the great experience at Weil, right? We work hard and we put our heads down, but that teamwork and that spirit and just there's an energy which helps you get through those late nights, as you said, and lack of change of clothing sometimes.
Exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's almost like techno-pop. When you have, it's like being at a club, with the music throbbing, when you have a big team working together, all toward the same end, and a lot of really smart people who are dedicated to a particular end for the client. And of course, those cases made law. In TWA, we set a precedent about the way you transfer huge blocks of aircraft as assets in a single transaction and perfect liens simultaneously to satisfy the lender. In Enron, law was made every single time our bankruptcy folks went into the courtroom. There were so many issues that were cases of first impression. And it was really fun to watch our very skilled bankruptcy folks, our skilled litigators, and our very skilled corporate team work together to just move aside all of the obstacles and get the matter closed in a timely fashion. It was a lot of fun to be involved in that.
Well, if you find yourself getting too much sleep these days and getting to change clothes too often, you're welcome to stop by anytime. We'll get you hooked up on a deal.
Well, I think that everybody knows, David, Gail, and you, people who are left, that nothing made me happier than to walk down the hall and, in the evening and see offices open and people chatting with each other. So, yeah, I miss those days. I do.
Well, so speaking of dedication, besides the dedication to the clients, which clearly you just highlighted for us, you were dedicated, and I remember very fondly the mentoring and the support that you provided to me as an associate. You were an early leader in thinking about retention and concerns of associates. What drew you to that advocacy within the firm, and are there foundational secrets of success that you think, despite the changing times, continue to endure that would be important for our attorneys to know?
Well, I think I have to give credit where credit is due. The original committee that came together and came up with the concept of the Associates Committee was Barry Wolf. Before he was Barry Wolf, long before he became the managing partner, and Mindy Spector and Lori Five, whom many people remember, and I think Jeff Tannenbaum also was on that committee, and me, and there may have been somebody else from litigation, probably there was. But there was a lot of thought and a lot of writing at the time about why we were losing very smart, highly credentialed women associates at the mid-level. And this group was sort of a think tank that was chartered by the management committee to try to come up with a way to retain people and make them want to stay at Weil and figure out a way to help them get through all of the conflicting demands on their lives. And we put a lot of time and energy into trying. I started to say, to make it easier, I think if you're going to succeed in a big, high-profile law firm, there are going to be slogs through the night. There are going to be slogs through the weekend. It's not dictated by the firm. It's dictated by the client and the client's demands. But we can certainly be more attuned to not just women with young families, but male associates with young families just associates in that mid-level in general. If they don't have young families, they have interests, they have passions, whether they're philanthropic or otherwise, that are important to them and life enhancing. And I think a lot of the conversation was about how do we make it easier for them? Maybe, when you're in the thick of a big litigation, you have to put the hours in. But can't we get away from FaceTime? Can we get away from, it's 8:00 on Thursday morning, you've got to be in the office, and give people more flexibility so that they can exercise a little bit more freedom in their personal lives and have more time to devote to the things that concern them. And I think the other part of that, Courtney, was we were hearing loud and clear that people wanted to make sure that they were getting the right training as they moved up, the right exposure, and they were developing their skills so that if they, for example, chose to go out to a client or to somebody else and go in-house or go to a smaller law firm, that they had a set of skills that was marketable, and they had kind of the imprimatur of being a Weil-trained, qualified person, lawyer. Right. So we started developing, you'll remember this, the checklist of here's the skills you ought to have as a junior, a mid-level, senior. And then in reviewing people, trying to, just have an open conversation about where do you think you are? Where do you think you'd like to see an assignment going so that you hone some of these skills so that they had more ownership of their own careers?
Well, it's clearly was important work, and your legacy continues there. I was a beneficiary of it, as is every associate at this point. So thank you for that. It's probably an imperfect process even today, but technology helps. I mean, that is a benefit of what we have today. I remember relying on Citrix and trying to work from home is not quite the same as what we at least can tap into today in Zoom and be together and face to face and have some other opportunities. So, but thank you.
And you mentioned secrets to success. I think that the secret to success really hasn't changed since Archimedes. I mean, it really is mastering your subject matter and really having a command of the law and a command of the facts, whether you're a litigator or you're on the corporate side. And if you have those skills and you put them together, I think success will follow.
We focused a little bit on Weil, but I definitely want to highlight what you're doing today. You've had a long-standing professional relationship with Darling Ingredients, yes. A client I remember well from when I first joined the firm. Would you talk about how your advisory role has changed with them since your retirement? And is there any advice you have for other attorneys who are interested in a path similar to you?
Well, it has changed dramatically. I represented the firm, meaning Darling Ingredients, for a number of years, probably 10 or 12 years, before I was asked to join the board. And that came about quite serendipitously. I retired from Weil, as she said, in 2012. And that was about the time that shareholders started being very sensitive to representation from various groups on boards. A lot of studies had been done that demonstrated that if you have different points of view, that your collective decision-making process is much stronger, more solid, more viable, more defensible, et cetera. And I got a call from the lead director not long after I retired. And he said, hey, come meet me for lunch. I'm in town. And when I met him for lunch, he said, "Why don't you join us on the board?" And I was extremely pleased. And I think that's not the way it's done anymore. I think companies typically use search firms, and with good reason. And there are a lot of wonderful search firms out there that are helpful. I came on as the only woman on the board, and that was in 2014. In this year, we have 4 women on the board. We have minority representation on the board. And by the way, Darling has been recognized by Catalyst for probably 5 or 6 years in succession now for being a leader in inclusivity on the board. So I'm very proud of that. And I hope I had a small hand in it, but I have to say it was tone at the top. The CEO was very much in favor of expanding the inclusivity on the board. And in terms of how that's helped, I have a recent example. So Darling, a couple of weeks ago, announced an acquisition in Brazil of a facility down there. And in debating whether we should bring this facility into the fold, whether we should acquire it or not, one of the debates was whether one of our kind of newish products, which is collagen, Vital Protein. You see Jennifer Aniston on TV, and she's got the Vital Protein, and that's why she's so
Absolutely.
That is one of our principal customers. And the collagen contained in the little blue jar, Vital Proteins, is a Darling product. And I have to say, when you were talking about expanding into Brazil to, in part, support this product, I was somewhat skeptical about whether this product had legs and whether we should invest, in continuing to grow that product line. And one of the new members of the board is a woman who has become a dear friend. Her name is Dr. Celeste Clark. And Celeste was a senior officer at Kellogg before she retired a couple of years ago. And she has a PhD in nutrition. And I'm saying in the boardroom, I don't know, I'm not sure that I'm ready to spend this much money. And, it feels like going out on a limb to me. And Celeste said, wait a minute, I've been involved in product development at Kellogg for decades. And here are the many uses of collagen. And so we have, the woman skeptic, and we also have the woman who, again, found it, in fact, extremely knowledgeable, background in the subject matter, very articulate, who was able to sort of bring an aha moment to not just me, but to the rest of the board, and sort of redirect our thinking. And I think that's a very clear example of the benefit of having different backgrounds, different points of view. I guess I should add that Celeste happens to be a Black woman. And I really mean that in the sense that when we saw her resume, it was sort of almost a no-brainer. And when we interviewed her on Zoom, it was definitely a no-brainer. We all fell in love with her. She flew down to spend the day with the CEO and make sure it was a good fit from her perspective. But she deserves, without question, a seat on the board, adds so much to the board without regard to ethnicity. But I, of all people, am well aware that 20 years ago, neither Celeste nor I would have had a seat on the board because I was a woman, maybe more than 25, 30 years ago, and her because of her ethnicity. So I think a lot of that has opened up. And I see all around me board members who are from various walks of life, various backgrounds, various ethnicities, various interests, various self-identities, and nobody cares if you bring the stuff to the table.
That's great to hear. I mean, thank you for sharing that. Obviously, DEI is a huge focus for any company these days, and to see, sometimes it feels like too slow, but measurable change happening, and to hear your perspective on that. It's one more example of your trailblazing, and it gives hope to, people like me and others who want to have that opportunity and feel like there really is an opportunity out there that they can.
There are definitely opportunities out there, and it is fun to see. And I can't take credit for this. I really think Randy Stewie, the CEO of Darling, has been so much at the forefront of pushing this inclusivity and recognize that it really brings a much more solid decision-making process to a boardroom. So kudos to him.
That's great. All right. Well, I know you and I could do this all day long. I'm going to ask you one more question just for the benefit of our watchers here. So this video is shared with Weil colleagues and alumni across the world. But you and I obviously have a history here in Dallas, Texas. Would you share your perspective of why practicing law here in Texas is special? And if you have any views for the future of the business of law in the great state of Texas?
Going forward, I look around Dallas as an example, and so many huge companies have relocated to Dallas, not to mention Houston, which is at its own huge surge of growth. But as an example, Toyota moved its nationwide offices to Dallas. State Farm moved its offices to Dallas. Huge campuses, huge presence of employees and management. And I think if you can't develop your own practice in an environment like that, a petri dish like that, shame on you, because the woods are sort of crawling with people in very large international sophisticated companies. And yes, they have their own client relationships with firms, but there are always circumstances where I think I told you, Courtney, that I was getting a pedicure and realized that the woman sitting next to me was a very senior corporate lawyer at Lockheed Martin. And we struck up a conversation, liked each other. A few months later, she calls me. The next day, I'm on a plane to Abu Dhabi because they were doing a joint venture there, and I had some relevant experience. And so the opportunities, I think, are sort of legion around here.
Well, I agree with that. Mary, thank you so much for joining us. As someone who retired at the top of her profession and continues to impress, I really appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule. And I know others who are listening do. So thank you.
Well, I was saying before we came on that I was, I think, chair of the Dallas office hiring committee when you interviewed. And I knew what a star you were then and said, we have to snatch her up, don't let her out of the door. And it's such a pleasure to see the success that you've had.
Thank you, Mary. I really appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you.
This has been fun. And thank you for your time.
It has been fun. It has been fun. To our Weil alumni, please continue to stay in touch and be on the lookout for future programs. Thank you for joining us.